Hey everyone, and welcome back to Ideanthro. Now today we're continuing our series looking at different types of bioretention systems. So when it comes to maintenance and design, let this car go. When it comes to maintenance and design and that sort of thing, we've got a foundation from which to talk. So today we're talking about what happens when you combine a bioretention system for stormwater treatment with a flood detention basin for storing back stormwater to prevent flooding. So today we're going to look at three different examples of this because that's the joys of filming beside a road. Because there are slightly different ways that you can set up these combined bioretention and flood detention systems, and it's worth having a look at all of them. So before we have a look at the first one here, what I'll just say is this: the way this is typically arranged is you still have the bioretention component, so with the filter media and all of that stuff and the plants at the base, but in order to get the volume to store water for flood detention, the systems get deeper. So we've got three types we're going to look at. We're going to look at a system that is relatively small, it's only serving a relatively small catchment and is quite deep, which is this system here, but is well vegetated. We're going to look at another system after that, which again is serving a relatively small catchment. It's relatively small itself, is quite deep, but the plants never got established. And we're going to look at what the difference is in how those systems appear, right? And then finally, we're going to look at what happens when you have a combined bioretention and flood detention system on a really big catchment, a genuinely massive catchment, and therefore a generally much bigger system. Another car going past. Okay, so this first site here, this site I first visited nearly 6 years ago, and it had been in the ground a couple of years at that point. So this thing's like 8, maybe 9 years old at the moment. And what I want to point out to you here is this system, if you were to actually walk right down into it, from the point that I'm standing on the edge here, you'd probably get down about 2 meters vertically by the time you got into the base of it. But it doesn't look too bad, does it? Like if we just pan around for a bit, you can see it really just looks like a little bit of pocket bushland, yeah? And that's because of something really cool that happens when you get good established vegetation, and particularly with a bit of a canopy happening. The trees and the different heights that are going on there play a trick on the eye where the system doesn't look anywhere near as deep. The next system we're going to look at is really roughly the same size of this, right? But you're going to look at it and go, what the heck were they thinking? That thing's ugly as sin. But this system, it's not too bad. These trees, some of them were planted, a lot of it's come up from seed over time, and it just keeps getting better and better every time I come here. Now functionally there's a few problems with this system in the middle, but from an aesthetic point of view, this is an example of how you can do bioretention combined with flood detention relatively well. But let's now go and look at something that hasn't worked as well. And here we are. Yeah, this sucks. This is the other end of the spectrum with water sensitive urban design. This is, you know, that challenging situation when people go, God, those bioretention systems, they're a bloody pain in the backside. This is the cause of it. And we can see just how different this sort of setup is. But fundamentally, these two systems are really similar. Now this one, in terms of its footprint, is a little bit larger, but in terms of the steepness of the batters, in terms of the depth, actually if anything this system's shallower than the last one we looked at. Like, these systems are so similar in their fundamentals and yet so different in their outcome and their delivery. Interestingly though, I can still see a future for this system, right? Because I can see stuff, a little bit of selected stuff working here, right? And maybe we'll have to do another episode of this in the future, but there are trees growing here, and I could see a future where with some sensible work, we could turn this system, which now is frankly ugly as sin. I told you it would be, and I'll back it up again while looking at it. This system sucks. I could see a future where we could turn this into something that was somewhat aesthetically pleasing, right? We've got potential with those trees. So this system was like, I think it was built in about 2009. It's currently really early 2016. 7 years in, we've got really mature trees. Given the life of subdivisions and how long this thing's going to be here for, we could, for example, plant this system out with trees, get something that looks okay gets rid of a little bit of the depth, makes it a little bit more natural looking. Maybe get some grass on these batters, right, so they don't, well, maybe not grass on the batters, actually. I'll rethink that. Yeah, let's take grass on the batters. Maybe some grass on the batters there to stabilise them so they don't erode. Then maybe some screening planting so you can't see this ridiculous pool fence all around the thing. And maybe we could end up with a system that's semi-functional. And in the scheme of things, 7 years initially sounds like a long time, but in the scheme of things, it's it's probably not that long compared to the life of this subdivision, how long all these houses are going to be here for. So that's the yin and the yang of the small stuff. This was the sort of thing that I, to some extent, was raised on in the bioretention world. But I've come to realise from looking around and seeing other stuff, seeing systems like the last one that we saw, that while combining bioretention and detention definitely has its drawbacks and has its risks, right? As soon as you start doing it, you are thoroughly pointing towards these sorts of outcomes, that if you design them right, particularly if you plant them out right, you can get an outcome that's really quite acceptable, like the last system. It's as much in the delivery as it is in the fundamental technology at heart. And on that note, the fundamental technology, I want to touch on something, right? So, and this is at least my personal experience, but we often, when people have, because of where they worked or that sort of thing, been exposed to lots of this sort of system, we often hear things said like, oh, that bloody bioretention systems, they're so ugly, they're so this, they're so that. And I can understand why they say that, but I think there's also a bit of a misperception or a bias or something going on here. Because if we look at this system and we look at why this is particularly ugly, we look at so people go, oh, the bioretention systems are so terrible, they're unsafe, they need a pool fence. Well, really, is the bioretention component of this unsafe? I don't think so. I think the flood detention component of this might be the pit that people think is unsafe, but remember, the whole reason this system's deep is because of the flood detention. The bioretention component at the bottom of it really only makes the system about 1/2 a metre deep. The next 1.5 metres on top of that is all to do with flood detention. And so we've got this bit of a bias where no one talks that much about flood detention, but in fact it's responsible for a lot of really awkward outcomes. And yet, because, at least in the case of some parts of Queensland, the two concepts popped up roughly at the same time, but bioretention was kind of more innovative or more, new and different, it attracts, bioretention that is, attracts a lot of the flack for really bad flood detention outcomes. This is a bad flood detention outcome. It is not, it is also a bad bioretention outcome, but the reason we come in, when people complain about it, the safety, the depth, those sorts of things, that's all detention, right? If you want to fix this, you have to be talking about flood detention. Obviously, we want to talk about bioretention as well, because there's bad things with the bioretention here. Like, there's no plants in it, right? So this thing's not working. But if we want to fix the safety and the aesthetics here, we have to talk flood detention, and we have to talk interesting approaches to do that. I've got a few thoughts on that note, but we'll talk about that in another episode. In the meantime, I did promise you that we'd look at a third site, and that was what happens when you go really, really big scale, big catchment, and you combine bioretention and flood detention. So we'll go have a look at that now. And here we are at our final site. So this is the larger example of a bioretention system combined with detention, and we're going to go for a bit of a walk through it. Now, this site has come up absolutely beautifully. And that's thanks largely to a lot of these regrowth acacias and other stuff that's just popped up here, and it's produced a really good outcome for this site. We're going to walk through the guts of it to show you just what you might find at the bigger end of this sort of thing. So we spun around just at the beginning here, but water comes into this site through the channel that you can see down there, right? So it's a concrete lined spoon drain, and it comes into along here. Now, just as we're walking in, I'll show you this. This site is still not fully operational because there's still lots of construction work going on in the upstream catchment, so the treatment systems haven't been fully built yet. So what you can see over to the right there is what will in the future be a little horseshoe shaped wetland. It's not been planted out yet, so it's not operational, but it's sitting there waiting, ready to go. But what we're coming to in front of me here is the sediment pond. So the concrete line channel we talked about originally flows down through here, and it comes in to this sediment pond that you can kind of see there through the plants. And as we're kind of coming into this, you can see that things are dropping down a a little bit into this system here, so that in a big flood event, when we get down to the bottom end of this, you'll see that there's a big embankment to hold the water in. So all of this area here operates the stormwater treatment under normal operating conditions, like the said pond, but under a big flood event, water can backwater over the whole thing and fill it right up. So we have the sediment pond here. And what you can see is there on the other side there, and there's another one close to me, I can't quite spot it, but there are some head walls. So each of those head walls there, once the system's operational and those are unblocked, will take water through to a bioretention cell in the background over there. So this system's ultimately got 3 or 4 decent sized bioretention cells and that wetland cell behind me that we saw before. So we've got a couple of bioretention cells over there, another one through the trees over there, and the wetland is through those trees over here. So we continue walking through the guts of this system here, and you can see that when this site was developed, some care was taken to try and preserve some of the original trees that were on the site, some big eucalypts and that sort of thing that you might see back over there. Yeah, but a lot of these trees that you're seeing doing here, some of them were planted, but all these acacias, like this one here, all these acacias have come up from seed and they've really helped to fill out the site. When the site was first developed, this thing was bare and I wondered what the heck we'd done, because I had a hand in like project managing the design phase of this. Well, but then I'd handed it over by the time of construction, and a lot of the really good outcomes here are down to another fellow at Logan City Council, Dan Carrick, who oversaw the design, and you know, he's got a big part to play in the outcome that we ended up here. Of course, as do the designers who are design flow. But the point is, so we got the sediment basin. From the sediment basin, we split flows off into those bioretention systems and the wetland, and then overflows can flow down here through this overflow weir that you can see in front of you here, and down this main channel. Now let's go for a walk through the main channel. So you can see I'm coming down into this, I'm dropping down, and I'm well and truly in the flood storage here, right? So in a big flood event, what would have happened? The first small flows would have gone into the bioretention cells and the wetland there, and then the bigger flows would have come over the spillway behind me and will be coming down this channel here. Now, because of some particular things that popped up in construction, they decided to put a concrete line channel in the middle here. Seems a little bit funny when you're down in it to have the concrete and the turf, but you don't really notice it from the outside, so that's not really the focus of this anyway, so I can probably live with that. So anyway, we're walking down to this channel. You can really get a sense, hopefully, of how I'm quite low down now. Trying to figure out, maybe I'm 2 meters below the edge batter, the embankment. We'll see this more obviously. And so there's a slight slope on this, sloping down towards the outlet here, right? So we wander down. I think I'm correct in saying there's a little pipe that comes in off the side there. That might be the outflow from one of the bioretention cells. I'm a little bit hazy about the design these days. It's been a while, but anyway, we wander down here, and in a second, wandering, past all sorts of interesting things down here. Oh look, there's a television. Gotta love dumping of rubbish, don't you? Anyway, we get down the bottom here, and we find this embankment here, and this is the end of the flood storage. So again, let's recap on what's happening in a rain event here. So you started off, you got a big rain event. The first flows have come into the said pond and been split out to the wetland and the bioretention cells. The big flows have then gone over that weir and come down through the channel that I've just walked down, and they have ended up getting to this point here, right? Now, certain bits of those flows are then going to just be able to go out through those pipes. But if it's a really big storm event, they're going to start to back up, and they're going to start to back up through this whole area that we just walked through and fill up the whole big area as one big detention basin, and it'll store it for a short period of time. We have another pipe that comes in from a neighbouring development just there that also makes it into the flood storage, but not the stormwater treatment. And then right on the top of this, we'll find a way to wander around the edge here. So coming up here, then right on the very top of this, as an emergency overflow, coming around, is another spillway. So this is like, wow, we're in a massive storm event here. It's just hammering, water's coming in like you wouldn't believe, and it's getting to the point where it's about to overtop the edge, and we need a safe emergency way to get water out of this. Well, that's what this this overflow spillway here is for. So you can get the impression, I'll walk back around the edge here so you can get a feeling for how the public would interact with this system. But you can see here what you can do with bigger, more regional systems. But the lesson that I really wanted you to take from this is, so you're going to see bioretention combined with flood detention in a few different forms, right? By number, you're going to come across a lot of those smaller systems, like the first two that we looked at. And frankly, you're probably going to notice more of the second type, right? Because I think as humans, we've got this little bit of a bias where if something's not too bad, we don't tend to notice it. We notice great things, right? Like sunsets and this sort of thing, right? But when something's good but not spectacular, like the first site was, with all those lovely trees, but after all, it is still just a flood detention basin, so it's not a sunset, but it's still nice. Where was I going with this? Yeah, so we have this situation where you're probably going to notice more of the second type, right? Because I think we've got this bias where the nice but not spectacular stuff like that, that first system, we don't really notice that. It just ticks along and does its stuff and no one complains and sweet, all is well. Whereas things like that second basin, you really notice, because we as humans, we want to solve problems and make our world a better place. At least that's how I feel. And so I think we intuitively notice that bad stuff a little bit easier. By the way, in the future, I'll be posting a video about the ability of Imperator cylindrica to run around and fill up spaces and frankly just be awesome. This is a really cool example of exactly what it can do. All through here, not every low growing plant here is Imperator cylindrica, but the stuff that's just kind of run everywhere and filled in the gaps is. Anyway, a little bit sidetracked there. I love it. And there's bits of it like over here, running through all the undergrowth over there. Anyway, where was I going with this? So you're going to notice by number a lot of the smaller systems, and you're probably going to notice more of those, not so nice ones than the good ones. Even though when you actually start looking really hard, there's actually a lot of really good systems around the place, right? But anyway, you're going to see lots of those, and you're also going to see the odd bigger system like this. Particularly at the moment, there's a lot of talk about this concept of stormwater offsets, which is an interesting one to explore because it takes a lot of work to get a system like this bigger system into the ground. This took many, many years of work to get it in, and the outcome's really cool, right? There's a lovely public interface with it. I can't wait till the wetland and the bioretention cells themselves are up and operating. But we've got this path connection through that never used to be here. It's nice bushland, it's really cool. There's a nice breeze today, it's really cool. There's wildlife about, although that's a crow that we can hear right now. Crows are lovely, but not the most amazing bird in the world. But yeah, there's different types here. We need to be aware of all of them. We need to be aware of the full functionality, these bigger systems. So if you're a maintenance practitioner, you can know how to look after these more complex, bigger systems. But equally, we need to know about the smaller stuff. We need to know that there's possibilities that when we have these smaller combined bioretention and detention, which maybe we don't want to deliberately try and design any more of them, but we've got plenty of them for maintenance. And we need to know that there's possibilities to retrofit these in such a way that they become more visually appealing and become better assets for the community. And so I suppose we're just coming back around near to the street here. I'll take you out to the street so you can kind of see the public's interface with this system from the street. So the other cool thing about this path, right, is so this new development is happening in the area straight ahead of me here. There's still lots of it where development hasn't started yet. But this path, if we spin back around, ultimately connects through to like a park and ride facility, like buses and that sort of thing. There's car parks, so people can easily catch public transport from there. But with this path, people from this little development here who do that won't necessarily have to drive around the long way, which is up that way, but can just connect straight through, and they get this interface with a little bit of nature and the like. So we're back out at the front here, and I suppose it's about time to wrap this up. So I'll spin the camera around, and we'll, sorry about that, because I was walking so far, whoops, I really do apologise for that. Because I was walking so far, I had to carry my camera equipment, and I've got I had to carry the audio equipment, and I've got the camera spun round opposite to normal, so it's quite a fiddle there to not just stick my palm in the camera, which I did. Anyway, so the wonderful world of combined bioretention and detention. There's lots to know there. It's worth being familiar with. And so I hope you got a lot out of this really quite long episode now. So thanks for tuning in. If you'd like to know more about what it is that we do at Ideanthro, there's a few ways you can get in contact with us. Firstly, there's the website, ideanthro.com. We post all our episodes there. We post about our ongoing projects and that sort of thing. It's a good spot if you want to know more about us. Equally, we have a mailing list where we mail out every time we release episodes. You can find that on the website at ideanthro.com. You just go to that address, scroll down to the bottom, and you can sign up there. You can also find us on Facebook. That is facebook.com/Ideanthro. And you can find us on YouTube where we post all the videos. You can subscribe and get them straight away there. So that's it for this episode. If there is stuff that you're curious about, things that you want to know more about, questions you'd like answered, drop us a line through any of the many means that you can, social media, email, phone, whatever. Drop us a line and let us know, because we love trying to answer questions and trying to help out and this sort of thing. So do that. We'd love to try and make an episode, and if we don't have the answers, we'll try and find people who do to make things work for you. So that's it for now. Thanks for coming on this journey of combined bioretention and detention, and we'll speak to you soon. Have a good one. See ya.